Everybody
Yes.
either has the hard copy that Linda emailed, or you're on Google Docs, because right now it looks like we need some people. There are not many on the Google Docs, so we'll get there in a minute. Don't worry if you're not on there. So the first thing we need to do, Heidi is also not on tonight. Heidi is out straight. The reason our June minutes were not approved was because there was a couple of things in there that she said she was going to add to the minutes, but she's been out straight. They're still not there. I think we can approve the minutes with the addendum that we're going to follow up with Heidi, because it may be whatever that little piece was is actually in forgotten land, because she's up to her neck. But I do think we want to approve those minutes so we can get them posted on both of the towns' websites. So if people had a chance to look at June and July, and if you don't know how to access them, we can jump ahead to using Google Docs. If you feel like you haven't actually known how to access them. So I guess the question is, do we need to do the Google Docs piece first? Or were you able to take a look at June and July minutes? And July minutes, just for the record, are pretty thin, just because we were transitioning and tried to capture as much of the conversation as possible, but there hopefully will be a better record going forward. So
I received your minutes, but I wasn't able to open it. It said specifically on the email that you did not have to be logged in to see the minutes, but when I would click on it, it would ask me to log in, but then I guess it was a different email than you had sent it to, so it wouldn't let me access it.
Okay, so I can add a new email, and actually, if there is an email that we should be using, because I used whichever one that we had from the town, if in the chat, you could put whatever your best email is.
Okay, I'll talk to you about it later. I don't want to take up the meeting time. Okay. This is my best email. It's just to log into Gmail. I was using my Gmail account, which I'd never ever use. I don't know. Maybe I'm just technologically disadvantaged.
No, Gmail should work beautifully.
Okay. I'll send it to you.
So it needs to be set so that anybody with the link can view. So rather than it being specific to like the people that have been invited to, I think is maybe the problem.
Okay.
You can log into, you go up to the upper right where your little icon is, and just change the email that you're logging in as. I think that works for you to access on Google Docs.
Okay.
Hi, Andrew. So the question, I can go in and change some settings. Right now, it has everybody on this able to both edit and should be able to get in. So was anybody not able to get the June or July minutes? So the question is, other than the note on Heidi's addition to the minutes, which we will sort of leave as a hanging piece of information that we can add at a later time, are there any discussion or edits we need to make? So do we approve the minutes for June and July? Do we have a motion?
I made a comment that probably shows up in your minutes about the spelling of Janet Easency's surname in the first paragraph.
Are we talking July or
July?
June or July?
July. So so these are entitled, do you see that comment? I would think it'd be highlighted, or maybe it's only highlighted in mine. Okay. So you mentioned that they're sort of thin for July. I found them kind of hard to follow. I know I was there, but that's definitely sort of the flow of the conversation. With anybody who wasn't there, probably finding it even harder to just kind of make some sense out of it. Usually, what we had been doing is that one of us, often I would be taking notes in this form, and then Jeff would take some time to put it together in a way that makes sense and flows and people understand what's going on. So I'm just hoping that it will improve from here. ESANCY is ESANCY.
So one of the things to know about Google Docs is that anybody can go in this committee and make an edit. And then what we would do is download as a document so that so it's raw in the Google Docs. And then once we download it as a PDF or Word doc, it becomes final and it can't be changed.
Good. I think that makes sense, and being able to make comments, but I don't know. I think it could be, it's a good idea, but nobody's going to actually
was prepared,
take the time.
myself included, to take notes that night because we were transitioning. And so these are thin just because it really was script taping what we were talking about.
That's what it was, yeah. But nobody's going to take the time, even if they can edit, to actually massage them into a set of notes, a set of minutes that people would follow. So it's up to the committee to decide what form they want, the final form they want to take. But I don't think individuals that aren't actually specifically assigned to it are going to sit there and take care of that process of finalizing the form. So I don't know. It's up to the committee.
I think I'm happy with just getting what we can get at this point, and we'll move forward, Anita, knowing that that we can start refining the minutes. But I would like to try this process and have people step forward to help edit, and we will massage them going forward. But I don't think anybody's got the time really right now to take a lot of notes, and we just don't. So.
And we'll work on it. We can collaboratively take notes. We don't need a single note taker during a meeting. What we do need to decide is whether July captured the conversation. And then June, whether we can accept those minutes without Heidi's piece that she was going to add. And so I asked for a motion of whether we have whether we can,
So moved.
So moved. We've had some discussion. Where are we at in a second?
I second.
I'll second. Yep. Or go ahead. Yep.
I saw some thumbs up. I see a couple more thumbs up. And it is A-okay if you feel like too new to the process to even know what June and July was about. So is there anybody opposed? That is probably the key question. Okay, so it looks like we've approved our minutes and know that we will make note of the fact that, this is a work in progress because we are making a transition, and we'll go from there. So the
Hey,
next,
Margot.
yes, Andrew.
So I never did find those. I found the agenda, but I never did see the minutes. So.
Okay, so that might
Sorry,
give
meant to
us
tell
a
you that
great
earlier.
way to transition to the next topic, which is a quick sort of how to do this Google Docsy thing. So everybody, I'm gonna take, where did it go? Am I in the wrong? Oh, it keeps kicking me out of my personal and takes me into my school email or my school Google stuff. So I'm going to take over the screen for a second. And you guys should see what I've created is something called, it's a folder. And you got a link to this in your email. And Andrew, this is the thing that you're wondering what that's about. If you have never done Google Docs of any kind, the URL is drive.google.com, and everybody can access this. You can create, it's a way that you can have a cloud-based storage of all kinds of documents. But I created a folder that's called Pathway Documents, Agendas, Minutes, starting back in July, when we're transitioning from Jeff to Linda Margot. And in that folder, there are a bunch of things. And this is where you guys can all find whatever is happening. And so we have, for each month, we'll create a little folder. And when we have a whole year's, we can dump it into, 2022 and etc. But for June, if you open up that link to that folder, just click on it. In it, you should see a bunch of materials. So that was the email you would have gotten yesterday or the day before from me. And so, Kristen, this is the one that perhaps you can't get into.
I was able to see the agenda. I was not able to see the minutes. It would let me open the agenda, but not the minutes. I didn't see anything that looks like this.
So when you got an email from me yesterday, did you, I'm just looking real carefully of who's in there. So Amber's in there, Allison, Andrew, Anita, Jeff, Heidi, Helen, Jane, John.
So yeah, you have, okay, so both of those are me, Kristen.Arundale and Kristen.Johns.
Okay, so we have both of those. And then Orion, we have 2 for you. Is there anybody missing in this list? Because you should have access. Really what you want to do is have the folder. And that folder is called Pathways, Documents, Agenda. Let me see if I can hover over it a little bit. It's not going to let me, but it's starting with 722. So this is what it's called: Pathways, Documents, Agendas, Minutes, starting 722. And depending on whether you have a Windows or an Apple, you could actually drag the folder, or you can make an alias right on your desktop. So you have that folder on your desktop. And then in that folder, you would have all of these things that look like this. And these are some of the more recent things, but we certainly have, I know for me organizationally, I kept getting things, I was having a hard time organizing, and this allows us to have collective organization. Is really the beauty of Google Docs for those who are less versed. But what we'll do is each month, sort of what we are focusing on, we, like whatever we're doing in a month, we can dump it into that month folder. But then there will be some other pieces that are sort of overarching. So we have sidewalk surveys that we do, and some other pieces in here. So I guess the first question is, is anybody not able to access the folder?
Yeah, Margot, this is Tom. I haven't found it. What is the heading on that email, the subject on that email? I have a bunch.
Let me see. And you're going to see my
Can I use the
map
computer
world.
real quick?
Let me just ask it this way. Is it the one that starts out Pathways Committee, August 3, 2022?
No, it's folders shared from Google. So look for folders shared,
Okay.
and the sender is Margot Murphy via Google Drive.
Okay, maybe that, let me,
Hey, while Tom's looking, Margot, I have a question for you about how we make sure that we keep this a public document, because everything here is public. And maybe that's a procedural question. I don't know, Allison, have you used this process with other committees?
And Orion, because we can, I mean, it's right now, you can see who it's shared with. It's shared with Audra, and it's shared with John Duke. It's also shared with Orion and Janice and Diane.
So you're just going to save yourself a lot of, we use OneDrive for the town, but it's very similar, and having used Google Drive for another nonprofit organization, I think that there's probably no reason to restrict access to this, and you're going to save yourself a lot of problems by just under sharing settings where you just were. If you just change it from restricted to own to anyone with the link, then it's just going to make it so, like right now, if we were to put the link in chat, it would, anybody could click on that. And then you don't have to worry about people being logged in and
Okay.
stuff. So that's, I would think this is so wonderful, because there are times when I've tried to look for Pathways documents too, and it's like the town doesn't update the website or something like that, or so this is going to be really useful.
Tom, did you find it?
well, I found one. Is this the one that says at the top, Pathways, Documents, Agendas, Minutes, starting
Yes.
7/22? Okay. Yeah,
That's
I have it
exact-
then.
So that's
I'm
the
good.
folder.
Okay,
And when you open, you're going to want to save that somewhere where you can find it.
all right.
And then once you're in that folder, we're organizing in lots of different ways.
Okay.
As you can see. Anybody else not able to find the folder? Are we good on that? So we're then in, we're August, what are we? August 3rd. So we'll primarily be in here, and we can actually organize some other folders as if it makes sense. I just did what, so I will tell you, I'm going to open up membership, because I actually found this really helpful just to get my own brain wrapped around of who are we and who's on this committee. So right now, and this was just an exercise because I felt like I knew everybody by name, but I didn't necessarily know, where do you live, or which community were you representing? So I may be wrong, but I think these are the 4 in Camden that are officially on the committee. And then these are the 3 that are alternates. Now, Tom, maybe you're officially on the committee and I don't know.
Not that I know of.
Okay. And then we also have our liaison, the executive secretary, who's the person to kind of contact at the town office, and then who the town manager is. And then Rockport, we have a full slate, and then who our alternates are. Andrew Daly is not officially an alternate yet, so we should put, he probably should be down a little bit, because Kristen, you actually did paperwork.
I did yesterday.
So Andrew should actually be down a little bit. We have our liaisons, and in Rockport, we're lucky because we have both a staff member, Orion, who's on with us tonight, who is a liaison, but then we also have somebody on the select board who is a liaison, and then the executive secretary and the town manager. So this gives us a chance to kind of see who we are. And if you ever just need to get in touch with them, and if people are comfortable, we can also put phone numbers, but for right now, that at least gives us the full slate of where we're at. And this will also give us a chance. Oh, great. Thanks, Christian.
Sorry, now I just messed it up.
No, not at all. You just, I mean, and that's why this is beautiful, because if anything changes, you guys can all help to update everything. And actually with that, I'm going to put a little, we'll put a little TBD with Andrew. So if we go back out to our thing and we look at our August, we can get to our agenda, and then we're going to start some minutes. But Andrew, to answer your question, Andrew Stanchoff, we've got, if you look in July and June, that's where the minutes would be from those months.
I did find them, and right now I'm in the agenda. It looks like I could still edit it. I don't know, is that, I mean,
For
I can
which
type
month?
on it. August agenda.
Oh, yeah, so August, but we've approved June and July, so nobody should edit those minutes at this point. And what we'll do is we'll make a permanent document of them to then get onto the town websites.
Okay,
So,
so, but we could now still edit the agenda though. That's, anyway, okay.
so what
And
we would do is after the minutes were approved, we'll go in and we'll make them uneditable then. So that,
Okay.
and we can download them just as a formality. Does that make sense?
After the, so if I edit something, do I just close it out when I'm done? It'll change all of them?
Yeah, so the way Google works is this is a shared way. So let me go back. I think I just messed myself up by so if we go into August, tonight's minutes and tonight's agenda are completely open to edit. We don't want to edit June and July because we've approved those minutes. So in a moment when I'm not sharing my screen, I'll go in and I'll make those uneditable because they've been approved. But tonight's minutes are completely editable and we can all add. And so what's really lovely about this is if we have a discussion and let's say I'm doing minutes or Linda's doing minutes or Will's doing minutes or somebody's doing minutes, but they want to be a part of the conversation and they're not being captured, somebody else can come in and sort of capture those pieces.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now it says June minutes not approved, but they should have been approved. Like somebody.
That's an error. So don't worry. I'm showing you how I just dropped the minutes in process.
Perfect.
Yeah. And no, actually that's accurate. June minutes were not approved when we started the meeting. We had the discussion. So don't even worry about it.
Okay.
This is real time though, taking minutes. But the question is flowing back and forth. Yeah. Okay, I got it. So I'm going to start working on the minutes now in real time as we do the meeting. But then when I'm talking, maybe somebody else can do the minutes, and that would be really helpful. Right?
So right now, it seems to me that we have Amber on. Anita couldn't load us, but you're on though, right, Anita? Oh, we've got more that are coming on. So Kristen is on, Linda's on, Jeff's on, Anita's on, Amber's on. If anybody wants to be on the minutes and actually see how the notes are being taken live, you'll go on to this. We're not going to stay on this screen. This is just to show you. Does that make sense? But this is collective writing. This is the way kids work now.
I know, it's wild. It's great. This is really collaborative. But I bet there's room for arguments too, but we won't go there. Not right now.
Well, but I think Anita's point is that somebody's going to have to then take this sort of mind stream and actually form them into minutes that can be approved. And we're
Right,
going to have to figure that out in
right.
this
So,
process.
but I get that, but I just, so the minutes that are in there, as we flow through, I just dump what I hear and then go back and refine, and we can do that.
Great.
Okay, good.
Margot, Linda, if you don't mind, Ryan with Town of Rockport, just from our standpoints, the minimum that we absolutely need is just if a motion's made and a vote. That's really all that's needed. If y'all want to add more information in there, just from the logistics of it all. So if there's a motion, a discussion, that absolutely needs to be captured. Everything else, just, I don't want everybody to get hung up in all the details that aren't being voted on quite yet.
Okay. Thanks. Are there any other questions? Like, do people feel like they have enough to get into these files? If you feel like you can participate in writing them, great, but as long as you can access them, that's like step one. Okay, so I'm gonna,
Yeah,
Oh,
it seems to work pretty well. There's a few glitches. Sometimes it takes a while to load up the documents, but it seems to be working on my end. Looks good, looks great.
okay, I'm gonna stop sharing this just so that you're not on my screen all the time. And we can see each other better. And that's one of the things about Zoom is we get to go back to see each other when you're sharing, you're kind of, but if you're on the minutes, you can still see what people are writing and things while the minutes are happening. Okay, so for good there, and again, Linda's gonna take notes. I'll take notes when Linda's participating, and then, or when Linda's facilitating, or when anybody else is facilitating. We can all sort of, if we heard something that was key that was said, we can all add to those notes, because it's really hard. And Anita, I gotta say, I'm really appreciative of that, like, focus. But I'll tell you, it's really nice when you have a lot of brains that, oh, this was really important, and somebody captures it and you missed it. And, you know, I don't think we would have had the Heidi piece of missing and not being comfortable with those minutes if somebody could have just put something down. So with that, our next piece is to look at our committee status. And I saw in the chat, is Will officially now in a Camden member of, like, does he move from alternate up to?
Yes, that's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Jeff.
Okay. So right now, we must have a full docket of both people on committee and our alternates. So that's really lovely, because I think it's the first time since I've been on this committee, which has been a little bit of time, not a lot. And then we have a couple of questions. Linda and I had a conversation. I would have been really happy if Linda wanted to take on full chair. She's not able to do that. I think we feel comfortable, and Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, between the two of us, we can carry the chair, co-chairs, and being true co-chairs. And then Jeff, you will be the man in the you know, in the distant, you know, you'll be the voice on our shoulders. And so one of the procedural questions I have is, when there is, if there's two of us co-chairing and you, Jeff, we just have to figure out how we are going to communicate with the town officials. So who's going to be that point person for, like telling Diane Hamilton that we needed to make a change in some status, the email that happened in the last day or so. Should that be you? Should that be Linda? Should that be me? How do we kind of do the official communication so that we can let the town offices know who those official communications should go to? That's question number one.
Margot, I'm going to jump in and I'm just going to say that's you and me, because it's going to get all over the place. And then when the next chair comes along, we're going to hand that to them. I think it's just, I think that's more efficient.
Are we good with that, Jeff? And just communicate? Okay. And then the second is meetings. So this is a Camden month. And if we were doing face-to-face, we would have been in the John French building, which I think one of the reasons I said, you know, it's August and it's summer and it's Maine, like finding parking at the John French building is just hard on a summer evening in August. How much Zoom and how much face-to-face? And does it make sense to kind of play that month to month? And then the question is, if we're in Rockport, how do we do the recording and the making sure that, like Camden, we know the system there. We need to know the Rockport side of making sure we have a recording. So what are people's preferences, are face-to-face versus Zoom? And how do we manage, because this is the only committee that is a 2-town committee.
I like the idea of the Zoom calls, especially in the summertime. Like you said, it's hard to park and all that, but either way, actually.
I just want to remind the committee that we discussed this about a year ago and came to a conclusion that we would meet once a quarter. It's totally fine if you guys want to change your mind. And we chose December to meet, which is before winter. And then we chose March because it's the end of winter. And then we chose June because it's the beginning of summer. And then it's September to skip it. So that's how we decided to meet in person, and the towns thought that was fine. But we can revisit it and we can go back to what we used to do, which was every month meeting in person at the alternate towns. Oh, and the other provision was that we were alternating those quarterly meetings. So in March, we would meet in Camden, and June we'd meet in Rockport, September back in Camden, et cetera. We never resolved, and maybe Orion, it would be good for you to chime in, how to record the meetings in Rockport.
Sure. I can chime in right now. We're working on a new system right now because we lost Bruce. Bruce was retired officially. He was our tech guy. So now we have Jeff Parker. He's working on a new solution. Right. Same spelling. I know. I had a bit of confusion. I thought, wow, I'm dealing with Jeff again, but no, different Jeff. So he's working on a new system. Not quite sure what that's going to be or when that's going to go live, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll have a resolve that's easier to function, that I can click play on whenever these meetings happen. So hopefully.
Jeff,
I would also remind folks that, as you well know, Jeff and I have tuned in from Sydney, Australia. We just had our breakfast. So we appreciate being able to continue to be a part of this, be able to participate. So that's the advantage of Zoom.
Is that an excuse for not coming to Maine just for a September meeting?
It's not an excuse, it's a reality. Sorry, Andrew. We expect you to pull over into a cafe when you're bicycling the United States and, take part in these meetings, right?
I should, you're right.
So, Margot, it sounds like the simplest thing is to stick to our schedule that Jeff just outlined, and that we, until the system is ready in Rockport for streaming and meeting, that we just default to Camden. And then when Orion lets us know, when Jeff gets his system in place, then we can, I mean, I think it's important that we go to Rockport, but if it's going to be a pain in the neck to stream it, then I think, Jeff, you said that we agreed to skip September meeting altogether. Is that what you just said? Or we're going to meet it? Okay. Okay. So let's just plan, we'll meet in person in September in Camden and stick to that schedule.
Allison, is that okay? And then Orion, when Rockport's up and running, we'll take 2 of those dates and we'll do them in Rockport.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So, we are ready to move into the meat of tonight, which is, there's a lot happening and a lot, both questions as well as things to celebrate. So the question starts are, Linda, you were going to do, you talked to Dave St. Laurent, and I'm going to pass it over to you to just kind of capture any updates on Camden Public Works projects.
Okay. And I was just going to add in the minutes that you'll see forming online right there, Google Docs, that we have agreed, the committee has agreed with that schedule. So I just want to get that line in there. So if you want to put that in.
Okay.
So yes, I spoke to Dave. He's on vacation, but he kindly picked up my call as he was working on his porch. And I said, hey, I won't take too long, but we ended up chatting for a while and just getting a lowdown on the various projects that are going on in Camden. And shoot, sorry, I gotta find my notes from what he said. Okay, so we talked about first the shirt, and Allison or others just jump in whenever. I'm not actually watching you, I'm reading my notes, so just yell, I guess. He said that the Shirt Tail Point project started this week, but I think I misunderstood that because that's been going on for a while. And that there's a memo on the town's website that outlines this whole sidewalk process out there. And that the finish date is going to be before the end of October. That's the target date. And then the state's going to come in and pave 105. So that project, long time in the in making, is, I guess, moving right along. I haven't driven out that way, but maybe you guys have, somebody on the committee has gone out that way or biked it. The bike racks, there's 2. There's one at the, probably people have seen at the Village Green, and one down at the public landing. And Dave's impression was that people, they're pretty, they're sizable, and I haven't looked at them up close, but I guess they have a number of slots. And he said that people in general going to tend to ride to their destination just like people do in cars, and they lean, like if they're going to go to the town office, they're going to go to the town office. They're not going to go across the street and park their bikes. They're going to go to the town office and lean their bikes against the wall. Same thing for, everywhere else. So the thinking of the larger bike racks maybe could be refined to bike racks that have 1 or 2 parking spots. That was his observation, but the town is sort of watching and seeing how, what people do. They're new, they look really great. He said that he's been trying to minimize the parking space appropriation of these. So sometimes he pushes one end up to at the public landing, I think he was talking, he pushes one end up against a barrier so that that's 1/2 fewer parking spaces. But then when he comes back, somebody else has pulled it out and rearranged the bike racks. So that's still like a work in progress. so his, his takeaway on that is just we're watching to see what's happening. And he did emphasize that the reality is that bikers don't want to walk. So they're just going to go and lean where they're going to go. Like schools are destinations, but and other places maybe might be destinations, but people going downtown are just going all over the place. So
Linda, who is the he that's making this decision?
this is, well,
I
making
wonder-
observations. It's a conversation with Dave Saint Laurent, the
Dave
public.
Saint Laurent, thank you.
Yeah. So
The other thing we talked about was, well, those big bike corrals, you see those outside of large buildings. Those great big bike racks. Camden's a lot of little buildings. So the other thing we talked about was attaching more like those handle things that are attached right outside of French and Braun and Camden. Just give someone a place to lean a bike and put a lock on. I haven't been able to talk to Dave. He's on vacation. Missed him this month, but I was going to try to get a hold of him, go over that with him, see what he thought. Thanks.
that's great. So you'll continue on that path.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Alice.
Allison's got her hand
Just
up.
real quick with that, one thing that Dave was really sort of clear with me about is that he was not going to get into doing that on like approaching private property owners. It has been like a little bit of a heroic effort to try to just put more bike racks at all with all the parking discussion, and it takes a fair amount of his bandwidth. So a lot of those places, he said it might be helpful if, if the committee members were to approach, private property owners that, you think would be good candidates for putting those French and Braun style, whatever the word is for them. But I don't think he's going to have the bandwidth for like going around and doing that, with private property owners right now. But I agree, those ones in front, like the French and Braun ones, are definitely used a lot. And I think maybe bolting some of those to the side of the town office would be a good option.
If I could chime in here for a moment, that there is another type of rack that is, it looks a little bit like a parking meter. So it's a single pole and then just a circle at the top that is, bolted to the sidewalk. So if we want to avoid approaching private business or landowners, that's a good option to explore.
Are they removable for plowing in the winter?
They can be actually up on the sidewalk or right next to the building. They don't actually have to sit in the roadway. So I can send some pictures of those, but it's good for one or two bikes, and probably a good idea to intersperse those around town.
That's a great idea. They don't have to be attached to the building, but they can be right up against it on the sidewalk. Sounds good.
Will, could you put that on the Google Docs? Like we could have an ideas folder, and then, Andrew, maybe when you do talk to Dave, you've got some resources there to give to him or to email to him.
Yep, I could do that.
I got a couple of comments on it. One is, I think I like your idea, Will, but I think having it up against the wall would be better than in the on the side of the sidewalk. The sidewalks down there are not that big already, and I have a feeling that pedestrians are going to complain. Or maybe we could put your idea with one of those receivers that you slide up and down in the wintertime, we pull them out or something. But I remember this conversation, Andrew, and between all of the committee members, we knew one or two of the owners of the buildings down there. And if I were a building owner, I would go for this. It's no skin off of them. They just say, yeah, go ahead, connect it. Why not? And the town takes care of it. I like that approach better. Maybe, I know, Allison, you never know, but I'd like to try, personally, I'd like to try that first before we take the route, put it in the poll in the sidewalk area. The second one is, I'm hearing a little bit of Linda contacting Dave St. Laurent and Andrew contacting Dave St. Laurent, and we're not supposed to be doing that. The town has asked us to keep a single point of contact, and typically that's well, either Orion or Allison chime in on this. I don't know if the chairperson has the authority to contact, or whether it has to be the liaison to the committee that contacts, or at least gets CC'd when the chairperson is contacting the town official. Because if I were Dave, it's like, oh my gosh, here's an email from Jeff, here's an email from Andrew, and here's an email from Linda. So who do I answer about the status of the Route 1 sidewalk?
So I think that we talked about that at the last meeting, Jeff, and we said that Andrew was going to be the person talking to Dave, and that in the last minutes, Linda was going to contact Dave to talk about all the updates. I think that was part of it. And Dave and I had a conversation last week that it was okay to give him a call, knowing that I was going to update the committee. I agree with your point that we don't want to have too many voices, but I think sometimes if the conversations flow, then let them flow so we can get the information.
So
I like that. So there's
yeah.
Just one more thing else, and then I want to hear from you and Orion. So what I heard you say, Landon, said Linda, is the person assigned is the lead, and we just have to be really clear on that during the meeting.
Right.
Got it. Allison, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I always interrupt. I'm working on it. I'm saying that, having personally also provided a lot of bike rack input, there's a little bit of a, like, we only have so much bandwidth right now, or the town does. He felt like, so he purchased some of those larger ones. There are some places that are where those can be used. There's enough, like the public landing one was getting overflowed completely, and it was in the middle. And so what he was really looking for input on was places to try those larger bike racks. That's what we have right now. And then looking in the long term for having, I think, like an ideas list, like you're talking about, of things that can be worked in as possible. But right now, because of all the projects going on, there isn't like bandwidth for him figuring out a bunch of different like bike rack things right now. There's the shirt tail, and even though DOT is doing most of it, it takes a lot from the town too, because things come up like every single day. So I think your point, Jeff, is a good one that I know I've personally decided I'm not going to make any more bike rack comments for a little bit, because it's just too much. I like saying, I don't know if it should be there. It should be there. I actually got my bike stolen. I left it at the Village Green rack, and it was stolen, which really surprised me. I did leave it there for 2 nights because I left it there and then I walked home because I was on.
Oh, sorry.
No. So that was kind of surprising. I haven't had time to file a police report. It wasn't a valuable bike. It was a one that really didn't even fit me. But anyway.
Was it locked?
Was it a gray
No,
Specialized?
I didn't do any of the things that you should do, but it was probably, a drunk person that was joyriding or something, or, but anyway, so there is, they did take a parking spot for one down at the public landing. So that one is, today I saw 2 bikes down there, but they have those already. Like, what could happen right away would be the places where it wasn't big enough for an actual parking spot. So we paint on the street. You can see those orange spots that are painted. And every time I make a comment about bike racks, I get brought back. Dave says, Allison, what we really could do right now would be this. If there's if one of those spots on Main Street is identified, to put a bike rack in or something else. So when you're down on Main Street, and I guess Elm Street a little bit too, there's one in front of Camden National Bank. Like, if you look around and think, okay, this is probably the most likely place they can drag those around. But I think there are a couple more that are still at maybe the Public Works garage that could go out.
Oh, good. That's great. Okay, so I have a couple more conversations I had with Dave, and the next one is Route 1, and he's really pleased with how they're progressing. Orion, maybe you've been out assessing the same project, but he says that Nitram is a really good contractor. That's the one, those are the people out there that are moving and shaking that whole new pathway. And he said, this little piece of information, Scott Martin, the owner of Nitram, is out there every day. And he said, Nitram is Martin spelled backwards. So if you ever run into Scott Martin, just say you're on to the origin of the company name. But he said it's one of the best contractor. This is Dave talking, that what's going on right now on Route 1 there is one of the best contracting jobs he's seen. And so they are, what are they doing? They're getting ready to, the sidewalk is put in place, and they're ready to do the curbing and concrete. Oh, they poured the, I don't know what the base is called, but for the light that's going to go there in front of Hannaford. So I think the whole thing is incredible. It's an incredible visual of how quickly, engineering, a well-planned and engineered project comes together, and is just, it takes place, it happens, and it gives a good visual of what hopefully we will eventually get the entire length of Route 1 and Route 90. Finally we have something in place after 20 years of, talking about it. So
Send pictures.
I'll get some pictures. I will. I'll get you some pictures. It's every day they make improvements there.
Yeah,
And
that's
I will
awesome.
say it's been interesting to see people that have come in and they're used to walking like the little road towards Camden from the Concord Trailways, because I see it all the time. And they come and they're like, where do I go? Do I have to go out into traffic? But it's like, I think they see the visualization that as soon as this is done, it's going to be like this highway for them to actually walk along.
There was a woman jogging along there on Sunday. I mean, she'd already, it was ready. So even though it's gravel. And then I asked him about Norwood Ave, just, general information, how that's working with the advisory lines. And he said it's great. It hasn't been, nobody's talked about it at all. And so then we talked a little bit about where he wanted to do that on Cross Street and Central Street, remove the sidewalk, and how he is talking with the residents there. And after I guess he met with residents along those two roads, and they objected to removing the sidewalk. But then after he had a conversation with them about using similar striping on Norwood over on Central and Cross, that they were more receptive to the idea. But he qualified it all and said nothing is going to, and this is to your point, Allison, nothing is going to be happening there for quite a while. He's got too much on his plate. But that was pretty much the gist of it, that Norwood, with those lines that everybody was squawking about, have come to be very useful. So that's another thing, that we could keep building in the ideas folder, and just keep on hand, so that when we talk to Orion, in Rockport, what's next for roads in Rockport, how we stripe roads there for pedestrian and bicycles, we have some models on hand. So that was my conversation with Dave, and I couldn't really think of any other projects, but if we've got other ones, then we can put it on the to-do list to ask for updates later.
So this leads us to Rockport, and we've got several pieces that we want to include. The first is we've had no movement on the planning grant. And so we have to, for the Route 90 planning grant. So we need to figure out where we stand. And Orion, this would be a great place for you to chime in, because I know that we had a conversation with the Rockport team of Pathways back in June. And this was as the VIP plan was kind of coming on board, and we had Patrick, what's Patrick's last name? He's Evans, yes. And also the other gentleman who's working with VIP, both DOT people. And the question was, we have been looking at wanting to do a planning grant on Route 90 for as long as I've been on the committee, to really think about a pathway that's going to connect sort of West Rockport into the village. And excuse me?
No, good. I was looking at it too, so.
And so the planning grant, we have some money that was in last year's budget, and where we're at in terms of being able to kind of get that moving. The planning grant is really going to set the stage for, the next 15, 20 years. And
So
on top of that, though, kind of weaving this into whatever's happening with comprehensive planning and with what's happening with VIP, so that it is all working in the same direction.
So just for clarity on this real quick, this VIP, is this the main DOT, the Village Partnership Initiative stuff and the Planned Partnership Initiative stuff?
It was the Village Improvement Plan.
Yeah, so the name, we changed all that to match what main DOT is. That's what the committee wanted to do. So it's now the VPI, so we're just changing some stuff. So Village Partnership Initiative is that task force that was just created.
Okay.
Okay. Now the planning grant, is this like the planning grants within main DOT?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what you're looking at. Is
And
there
it
anything
was
specific,
up to
or are we looking for?
$50,000 matching, and I believe we had 20,000 in last year's budget. That was still in the budget from last year, and John thought he could come up with some more, and so we were just looking at what was really the range of that ask. And the planning grant really is about, Route 90 has changed a lot in the last 20, 25 years. And so in that, this is really about connecting, the parts of Rockport, as well as connecting Rockport to all the other things that have happened in this community in the last 20, 25 years.
Right.
So it's also expanding that outdoor, economy part of the world.
Right. So was there something specifically named on the planning grant? Was there a name associated with it, or was just the planning grant with main DOT?
Good question.
If you recall. And mainly, do you remember any numbers associated with it? You mentioned something, but it cracked up on me. There was a budget match.
So we don't have anything yet with DOT. What it was in the Rockport budget.
Okay.
Well, we had made progress in a conversation with Patrick, and John and Patrick were on the same wavelength, as I remember the conversation. And who else was on that? Heidi, and I think Heidi was on that. It was a phone call that we had maybe a couple of months ago.
Right.
And John was able to slide some funding over from the sidewalk that wasn't going to get constructed along Main Street over by the public safety building.
Okay.
So I guess the question is, it was going to be John and Patrick furthering that conversation. So the question is,
So I can share this with you all as well. So when I first started, I got fed up that there wasn't a sidewalk going from the school at least to downtown. I saw kids, walking on the street every 90. So I started a conversation with Gardley and got an idea of what it would cost. So do y'all have an idea of what it would cost to take a sidewalk from Route 1 to
Yeah,
17?
millions,
Yeah,
3
yeah,
million, 3 or 4
yeah,
million.
okay. All right. Well, good. Y'all know that. So it seems like we're talking about the same item that we want to have done. So it's good that we're collectively coming together on this. So it sounds like there's a budget. I'll look into that a little more. And it sounds like John said there's some money set aside as well that he'll dedicate to this. So I'll find that as well. So I'll talk with him tomorrow.
And then it's really following through with Patrick to see about how we sort of leverage this to the best sort of vision of the next 20 years. Because whether it stops at the high school or whether it goes all the way up to Route 17, that corridor has become a very different means. You see people running, you see people biking it. And, at this point, we haven't had safety issues there. We certainly have had safety issues at 17 and 90.
Sure.
Whether it was with cars. So there's there's just so many more break-ins into Route 90 than there were 20 years ago.
Well, that's true. So we're also constructing a TIF district for Route 90 to do some sewer expansion, but also to expand sidewalks as well. So hopefully, if everything goes well, there'll be additional funds to make this a reality. But that'll be
Awesome.
on the ballot for November to get approval. So be on the lookout for that.
Would that be bundled with the sewer project, Orion? Is that
There is going to be two processes of that. So there's two separate items. There's a sewer expansion and a treatment plant. So you'll see two items.
Ryan, can you clarify what the item would be on the budget? On the ballot,
Well, we're crafting the questions right now, but there's going to be two TIF districts. One's going to be a downtown TIF district that'll take care of our treatment facility that we're having to get. And then the other TIF district will be for Route 90 sewer expansion.
So it's a TIF district. That's what would be on the ballot. And if you guys remember, we went through this in Camden as well. And one of the key elements to TIF districts is that allowing access into that TIF district can be incorporated. Access as in pedestrians getting there or moving around in the TIF district allow you to expand the scope of what the TIF monies can be used for. So seems like adding infrastructure for bikes and pedestrians would be a natural.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And just one other thing on the discussions with Patrick Adams. I wasn't there. Margot, Linda, I think Heidi was part of it too. I thought Patrick Adams had actually, and this is to your question, Orion, had actually pointed towards some particular pot of money that MDOT had. And I think that's what Orion was looking for is what was it, a community grant program, or what was the name of it? That might be really helpful for Ryan. And I can go back in the notes, but do you have a memory?
It wasn't the village, because at that point, Patrick and John had already talked about this village improvement grant in light of the new bridge, I guess. And then Patrick was clarifying with John during this conversation, is this the same pot of money? Does Rockport now have two conflicting projects?
Right.
And Margot, I remember you chimed in and said, hey, whoa, wait a minute, we're going to do yet another village project, when we've been crying for years to get something going on Route 90 and down to Glen Cove. So and then I think that's when Patrick and John said we can weave these things together. And I think that is the most important thing that we can say as a Pathways committee, is that, one more village project is it just diminishes the rest of the town at this point.
And not to at all be political, but, and not at all that I don't know how to even say this correctly, but I noticed that one of the people running for select board for short term says, you know, in his little banner is, you know, for all Rock, which is like for all Rockport. And I think there's sort of that growing sentiment that if you don't live in the village, you know, you're kind of one of the marginalized communities of Rockport. And this is an opportunity for us to really bring Rockport together. You know, it's a big community, and I think if we saw any sort of improvement that was expanding beyond the village, it would be just a beautiful thing for everybody. It would build a lot of community.
Well, plus connecting to Erickson and Aldermere, because they are a huge part of what's going on, and connecting to the Erickson connector trail on over Beach Hill and stuff. So this seems to be our shot. So hopefully, Orion, you can get some clarification on where we are with that one.
Sure. Well, tomorrow I'll talk with John, see what he recalls with Patrick about this, and I'll reach out to Patrick as well, see what he's got to say.
Great, thank you.
And if you need us for any conversations, don't hesitate to pull us in.
Okay. Will do.
Can I
And that,
chime in here for just a sec as it relates to a pot of money that with regard to the county-wide effort, Knox County-wide effort, in conjunction with the Emergency Management Association to address mitigation efforts regarding climate change. There's a lot of money flowing right now in that direction. And I'm just curious if that might be a place where we could look at incorporating some of the efforts going on even along 105 now for regrading all the sides of the streets, all the side of 105 out here in Hope. So there might be some way to look into that. I don't know if you've heard anything about that, Orion, or anyone else has, but a lot of money flowing to those mitigation efforts that might incorporate including or upgrading sidewalks and bike paths.
I know a little bit about it, but I don't recall anything about bike paths, but I can definitely look into it again.
Well, that's something for the ideas folder. Links and.
Got it.
yep. We have two other Rockport issues or things to discuss, and that may bring us to the evenings. And one is the letter that we sent regarding the new housing development that's being proposed where the down Route 1 where the pediatrician's office, and if they're really being targeted as low income, that some foresight into walking and bike paths being particularly important, because I actually heard an interesting story in southern Maine, some areas, and I can look into this, but they're putting in low income housing in an area, but you know, the big push is making sure that they have walkable and bikeable and connectivity to the kinds of resources that people with low income who often don't have cars need. And so that's one of the big question marks in that approval process is is there thought to making sure that if we're going to look at, housing, we know is an issue and everybody's on board with that, but just making sure that we're not creating more problems with trying to fix a problem.
So Margot, the planning board did approve that last week, that project. and we did send them a letter. In fact, I put the letter in the August folder for you all to see if you want to. It's just a very short letter that Orion suggested I send to him instead of just throwing ideas out, which I appreciate, Orion. Thank you. So the Pathways Committee collectively stated an opinion to, or raised the question to the planning board. What was disappointing was hearing, I did watch that planning board meeting. It was disappointing to hear that that 50% of the people living there won't have cars. They won't be driving, but they will be transported via car or via the Dash bus to wherever they want to go. And that just seems really isolating. It's not a neighborhood. It becomes, a apartment complex on a suburban or actually a strip, a commercial strip. And that's not the way to plan for communities. So I feel the need to strongly keep advocating that somehow we move forward, even though we're moving forward with Route 1, that if we are developing, and we have over the past 20 years developed Route 1 and Route 90 more and more, and we've tried to do it, nicely, but I think we just have to advocate more strongly for a pathway, pedestrian and alternative transportation pathway along Route 1. And maybe there is more funding through low income housing, through those types of housing and urban development.
Linda, is there something in the comprehensive plan that requests pedestrian infrastructure when these developments come in at this point in Rockport?
Well, I can't remember exactly what I wrote in that transportation plan, but I know that the urge was there. And I don't know if it was articulated in language that we use today, but whenever we wrote that plan, we wanted to make sure that we had alternative transportation somewhere in there. So it's there, but I think the Pathways Master Plan and Jeff, putting those action items are even more substantial or substantive to what we're hoping to do.
I think you're pointing out a really very important issue. Somehow we've got to get this bike ped infrastructure issue front and center with the planning and make a connection between adding development and adding ways to get to and from. Because as the prices of gas continue to go up, people are going to be maybe even forced to find ways alternative to gasoline powered vehicles to get where they're going, and bicycling will become more common. So it's just the time is here, and it's just got to happen. We've got to get the brains that are making these decisions going along that path of making pathways.
Well, having
Thank you
that
for
Hey,
writing that
Linda.
letter.
Yeah.
When you say pathway along Route 1, is that you talking about something in addition to a bike lane, or just a wide shoulder that is already there?
You made a good point, Andrew. I mean, a wide shoulder, a marked lane, would be a great start. And that's, we talked about that too when the sewer extension went in on Route 1 South in Rockport, and we said, well, why didn't we, say that? And we did say, can't we get something striped along the highway there? Because I think Will said at the meeting, and Orion, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a 10-foot shoulder. There's a 10-foot shoulder.
It's a great shoulder, and a little bit of paint and some signs couldn't improve immensely. But as far as a separate pathway, you'd be crossing private land on a separate pathway. I don't know how that would work, but but just a great shoulder, all that's necessary. Not great for walking on when you got a lot of traffic, but it's better than a no shoulder.
It's a good start. But we have
Yeah.
the Route 1 pathway started here, which is a good model. So I think, that's there, but you're right, Andrew, maybe just striping it.
So you think just the bike lane on the shoulder? Or shoulders, both sides, painted?
The fog line and just maybe a bike awareness sign. I don't even know if it actually has to be a bike lane if it's already a wide enough shoulder.
Route 1 has as you know, Andrew, a very wide shoulder all the way.
Yeah.
Except for it's being remedyed right now in front of Hannaford. It's a great shoulder.
Yeah.
I think there are plenty of people, there are those of us like Jeff and Andrew and me, and I'm not sure who else, that don't mind riding along Route 1 or a place like that, and trying to, wear a jacket maybe that someone can see. But there are way more people who are afraid of riding along traffic, and certainly parents who would not want their children to go to their friend's house on one of those lanes. So, the issue is still there, and we need to advocate for something like what's going on for Maritime Farms.
I think
that's really the right solution.
Striping and sharrows and such would enhance it immensely. I mean, then people would say, oh, yeah, it's okay to ride here because it says we can, and it's safe because it's wide enough.
Yeah, if I could add that there is an increasing trend for people, it seems, to pass on the right-hand side, along that shoulder. And so I think that more than just a sign, I think maybe painting the whole shoulder a bright green like they have down in Cambridge, Massachusetts on some of the busy streets. So it's clearly designated for bicycles and not for cars to use. Something like that might be really more, make that message more clear.
Yeah, that would be great. That would have to be budgeted as an annual painting job because it only lasts a year.
Is that true, Anita, for all of the lines? Does the DOT paint the lines every year?
In my observation, these things don't last more than a year or two. Think about the textured brick crossings at by French and Braun. How long did that last? Was it a year or two? But it wasn't much longer. Okay. And that's not paint. That's heck of a lot more than paint that they put there.
The paint on the fog lines and the sharrows and the bike lane paint on the road, I think would last a little longer because you don't have cars driving over it continuously like the other lines, but at least every other year. But you're right, it does need to be kept up.
And just from a perspective, Orion, if this does, when this gets developed into housing, even just thinking about the support of people needing mobility and access, and whether pathways, through other organizations, whether it's the Bicycle Coalition, being able to provide bicycles, but if we have infrastructure that people can tap into with how to use that infrastructure, and I think that's the key that we're looking at. And then if then it's about we don't have access to bikes, then we can have other ways of plugging into that. But, people need access to mobility. And
Sure.
That's not a place that's highly, accessible to a lot. So if you don't have a lot of money, you need to have other means to get around.
Right.
Which, from the aside, I know there's a lot of pushback, but there's some for me, I think there's some exciting ideas around that Elm Street, or not Elm Street, the Rockport Elementary School site. Just saying.
What do you mean, Margot? What's going?
I think the development of that site into that multi-use kind of space
that
is pretty exciting.
Okay. Yeah.
Has, it's certainly more connected. to community and places and spaces.
Yeah, and I think we can't lose sight of public health too. I mean, we talk about public safety, which is huge because we keep scraping cars off of the side of the Route 1, but you know, people get hurt. But I think public health is, and I don't know if there's any funding around those models for pathways and sidewalks, but I mean, maybe that's something to look in collaboration with Penn Bay Medical Center and Maine Health.
It's a good point. Yep. Yep. And Orion, there's one other thing while we've got you, which we're so appreciative of you being here, even though you're our liaison. And that is wanting to make sure that when opportunities arise, like the paving of Park Street that's been happening this week, whether we have opportunities to rethink a simple way, you know, that is a heavily used road by both pedestrians and bicyclists. And the speed on there, even though there are cops, it's also a speed trap for cops. You know, it is not necessary, you know, the fact that we haven't had more accidents on there is a godsend. But the fact that it's being repaved, if there is an opportunity for pathways to kind of chime in at some point, because that would have been an ideal place to think about, even if we could have added one more foot of, you know, asphalt on each side, or how that's being constructed to be a much more functional pathway.
Sure.
I just want to add on. I want to add on to that. That is the route that the high school mountain bike team takes to get to the Snow Bowl. They ride down the back, and they are a mob going down there, and then they go up. What is it? Well, I can't remember the other street.
Main Street.
Well, they
Main
change his
Street.
name.
No, they go John Street. Well, they do.
No, not John. Yeah, but no, they ride out to the Snow Bowl to Rollins Road there.
Park Street.
No, it's
Main
the one,
Street,
Hosmer.
yeah.
They go down and then they turn left on Hosmer. But that intersection gets a ton of traffic from mountain bikers and road riders too. And I just want to underscore that the Pathways Committee, and Orion, you probably don't know this, wrote a very strong memo to the select board a couple years ago about the lack of engagement from committees in the town when looking forward to the following year for construction or projects, that we just don't even know about it until we go, oh my gosh. And Andrew sent me a text last week, said, hey, they're paving Simonton Corners. It's like, where the heck did this come from? And we just don't seem to.
I see.
It just doesn't happen. And
We
all
don't
it
know
would
any
then
of the sort of the plan of pavement and
all it would take is Public Works saying, and Dave is coming in and saying, hey, these are the 3 projects we got for going next year. You guys have any input on to what that looks like? That's all it takes.
Yeah.
And we encouraged it. Yeah. And so
it seems like it's just a huge missed opportunity to not widen Park Street at that point, and then Camden could have followed suit on Simonton Corner Road. And that's a great path right out to the high school from the town of Camden and the Snow Bowl.
Okay.
I don't know if they're going to make it a little bit wider. Maybe there's still a chance they can add a foot or 2 on either side.
Probably
I'm not
not.
sure.
And it's probably a drainage issue anyway, and because of the river there. But at least we could. The whole point is that I don't know. It's probably we own
missed
part of it too.
opportunity.
Yeah, it's a missed
I agree there.
opportunity.
So what I can do, and when my meeting tomorrow with John, I'll also see if Mike is available, and I'll chat with him, see what is upcoming for development and also or repaving, and see what it would take to expand it by a foot. I know that was not included in the budget at all. It was just to repave, but I can at least see for future endeavors whenever we do repave, so how we can get that included in the budget so that we can start including those.
Orion,
Mike's
on,
gonna look back.
on this one, I noticed they removed all the old pavement entirely. They had that grinding machine, and that's a lot bigger job than just a skim over. So that really gives you the opportunity to really, widen it or enhance it.
And Orion, I know it's being a little pushy here, but what it is that when Public Works is doing the budget for the following year, and they're thinking of doing this project, that's the time to engage, so that then is when the extra monies can be incorporated, so that it's clear, not in the spring when the budget's already been set. So it has to be the prior year, and that's when the meetings have to happen. And Orion, it happens. It's like, oh yeah, next time we get around to doing this, we'll do it. But it's a process thing more than anything in this case. It's a habit that Public Works comes and says, hey, here's what's going on. And I know that's crazy because Public Works is doing their budget the night before it's due. Because that's what we all do when we're doing budgets. We're doing last minute, but try to hold us to task a little bit.
Sure.
Thanks for listening, Ryan.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we are at our time end. If we look at the agenda, we actually, are we done with the sort of subcommittee, sort of the big things that we needed to discuss for Camden and Rockport? I think we're good. So we're at our meeting's end. We have a whole list of things, really wanting to figure out what's on the front burner for Camden and our back burner items, which has been a list that has been on our agenda for time, for at least the last year. So one of the asks will be to think about between now and September, and we will have a face-to-face meeting in September, that we think about what are the really big issues moving forward. And then from the liaisons in particular, is if there's anything that's sort of happening at the town that feels like it's the place for us to chime in on, and if there's opportunities as because this is sort of pre-budget time, if this is the time for us to be thinking about some of those synergies, where things that are being discussed at the town may also be a time for us to think about how pathways can plug in. Does that make sense?
I also want to make sure that we're diligent about checking the minutes and seeing what all the work was that we were supposed to do from the last minute. We are not good about that.
And the one thing I did from this meeting is places where people said they were going to do certain things, kind of highlighting their names in red. And when we go through these minutes to kind of put this transcript and put them together as minutes, we can do similar, just to make sure we have the people are clear about what they stepped up and said they would do. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Yeah, it does. I would bold it and say action on the prior minutes too, but unless the chairs bring it up at the following meeting, and it's a good habit to do, just to say maybe what we need in the agenda, future agendas, is follow-ups from prior meeting or something like that. And just tick it down. It's like, okay, Jeff, you said you'd do this. Will, you said you'd do this, but what's the status? And that's why this sort of the standing projects are there, so we can check in on them. That's it. Thanks.
Does anybody have anything they want to say, whether things they've seen, thought about, or want to add before we depart?
Just a shout out for the Sharrows, Anita, Jeff, everybody on the street coming into town. I ride that every day, and people give plenty of space and room. It's been great. Thank you.
Oh,
I had
Does
a
anybody
question.
know what's
That's
going
great.
on Route 105?
Yeah, it's all drainage related, mitigation effort to keep the water off the road.
Will they be widening it?
I don't think
Because
so.
it's the worst road to ride around here. Nobody should ride it. A friend of mine was hit on 105. But yeah,
It's really striking though to
too
see
bad.
what they're doing. It makes it seem like they could widen it. Like when I was driving on it today, you can see just with this machine, what they did, they made a gravel shoulder like in record speed. And it just seemed a lot more possible to actually have a shoulder than I had envisioned it before. So everybody should take a moment to drive out 105 toward Hope and just kind of notice the difference. It's interesting.
It's an often used path. People like to ride around McGonagall Lake on a bicycle. It's like a great ride on a map, but you get on that windy, twisty road with poor sight lines and narrow, and it's lots of trees. It's a little scary. So it would be great to widen it, get a shoulder on it. It's heavily traveled route.
Yeah, heavily traveled by people that are heading out to Hope and Lincolnville and wherever in their big work trucks coming to and from work, and they're just in a hurry to get home.
Yeah.
It's they really haul on that road.
Scary.
I wanted to, you asked Margot about any more thoughts. The back burner items, as you mentioned, they're getting more and more, and we're not addressing them. So it might be good to pick out some things that you might want to put on the actual front burner minutes and try to, or even have a discussion about which should be moved up in priorities. Which reminds me, the Camden Select Board, Allison, aren't they having a priorities workshop coming up tomorrow?
I think it's the, no, it's the 8th, but that it may actually get rescheduled.
So
But
I
yeah,
have one.
priorities
I have one
workshop.
for
No, Anita, that's not
Friday
right.
the
That's
5th?
no, that's my reminder, Anita, to send an email to the select board
Okay.
prior to the meeting of the
Okay.
priorities that we want to advocate for.
So
And
yeah,
Allison,
so
you'll be seeing that email.
It really
please-
is a good thing, sending emails to the select board, just saying, hey, there's a lot of turnover on the select board and we get emails about various things, and just taking, even when it's not a very specific item, just taking the time to say, we want to see more of this or that, or we have concerns in general. It really does make a difference.
Jeff, I agree, Allison. Jeff was talking about when the timing is right for advocating for certain things, and this is one of those times. So especially for the newer members of the select board who are looking at the entire list of priorities, and without as much background experience having addressed these priorities over time, it's a good time to advocate for things that we feel are important, because those priorities get cemented into the year's agenda, and if they're not on the table, they've fallen well and truly off the table. Okay, so everybody should put that on their list to email select board members about these priorities.
Well, that's why it's on my list, Anita. But actually, I think just one of us from the Pathways Committee would be fine. And I've kind of signed up for that.
I think it's actually great for people to hear from different voices, and I shouldn't be creating this guide to how to lobby the select board, but the reality is that it is nice to hear different perspectives and to have different, more than, one person, and it doesn't always have to be right before the priorities meeting, just, occasional, hey, just a reminder that we care about this, or I noticed this today. It doesn't have to be official committee input. If you want to just send an email to the select board, just do it. And you don't have to say this is the opinion of the entire Pathways Committee, but it can be, just pedestrian related or whatever, it really does make a difference.
One last comment. We do have a lot of comments in the chat. Is there anything that jumped out that we did not address?
Can we save that chat maybe and just put it in the ideas folder? Because I haven't had a chance really to run through the.
It's mostly just me like going off about things I don't want to interrupt the meeting for. That's my coping mechanism. This stop and go thing is a big deal though. The live stream of the meeting cut out while it was going, but they did record it and then re-uploaded it. But the daunting problem that's never been able to be solved really is from Rennie's down to the Elm Street School or the Montessori School past stop and go, how to get a plowable, workable sidewalk all the way through there. And so MDOT did a study of the options there. All of them sort of would kind of require eliminating the right-hand turn lane to make room for a sidewalk rather than more cars. But they went through a really detailed presentation, and the select board was really like open-minded about trying to solve some of those problems. And there wasn't anything perfect that came out of it, but they did offer to pay for the entire thing, MDOT. And so I think that if having people like become familiar with that area so you can participate meaningfully in the conversation would be a good thing. So we don't miss that opportunity.
Allison, is that the Patrick Adams one you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Allison, did he send the data?
I just checked my mailbox in the office to see if I haven't gotten anything, but I'm going to ask tomorrow if everybody else did. There's supposed to be an actual written report. Yeah, that it would be worth watching. I'll try to send a link to that presentation with a timestamp for everybody.
And just so you guys know, I mean, it was interesting, but what Patrick tried to do was condense like 80 pages into 15 minutes of research. And it was a struggle for everybody, I think, to follow him. And he acknowledged that. That's why I was looking for the actual report so we could look through it and try to glean some insights into what that data means.
Yeah, apparently he was limited to 15. Somebody told me he only had 15 minutes, which I was, that was unfortunate, but
yeah.
Yes, if I get that, I was hoping they would send us a digital version of it so it could just be disseminated. So I will try to get my hands on that. It was very odd how they were like, we're going to mail out copies and they should be there on Monday. I didn't really understand that, but I'll try to get a digital version. I will send it to everybody if I do.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
If this is a big item, we need to have a voice here.
Would we be able to voice over the Google Docs setup that we're doing? I can add stuff to the agenda if something comes up.
You can add stuff to the minutes, and then one of the things is we need to, or not the minutes, sort of the running notes, and then we need to turn these into minutes. But you can add anything to the minutes between now and our next meeting before they get approved. Actually,
Actually, no, we shouldn't add to the minutes after the meeting. The minutes should close this meeting, but why not? We'll open a file for the agenda for next time. So,
yeah, that'd be great.
If somebody
That's a good
wants to
idea.
address, then that agenda is rolling until it becomes set and sent out. Because I don't think it's a good idea to keep expanding the agenda once we send it to Diane and Janice.
So like a 3-week period.
So we have a 3-week period. That's a good idea, Andrew. We have a 3-week period to come up with ideas that we want to talk about for the agenda. And then that agenda's done. So there's something finite to the whole process.
And Linda, did you say that no changes can be made to the minutes?
Well, no, after they're approved, we can't change the minutes, but we're not going to go on tonight. Nobody's going to go on to change add things to the minutes. We can edit them, but we can't go in and say, oh, okay, we're going to talk, I don't know, whatever we were just talking about.
Yeah, we're gonna now
Something we
turn
didn't
these
talk
notes
about.
into minutes.
Something
But-
we didn't-
Yeah,
Right.
these notes are going to become the minutes. I mean, we got to follow the process somehow, you guys. We're not going to be like all over we may be old hippies, but we're not going all over the place.
Hold on, I can't just write all my opinions in the minutes, the working minutes document, and by the way,
Well,
So we
could you
will,
put in the chat?
have a
Could that be
folder
added to
for
the minutes?
September agenda.
That's a good idea. So Andrew, put your ideas for the agenda, look for the September folder and look for the agenda there.
Okay, how about the chat? Would those go in the minutes as well?
I downloaded the chat, so I'm gonna add those I'm gonna at least add them to the August folder. And we can figure out as we put these notes into minutes.
yeah, not the minute, like, don't put all my chats in the minutes. That like doesn't need to rise to that level. That's just gonna be
They're
overwhelming.
important, Allison. They're great points, Allison. You brought up a lot of good ones.
That's great. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, it's late. We need to call it.
Great job.
Thank you, Margot.
I move that we adjourn,
I second that.
7:47
Jeff?
p.m.
Jeff, I sent you a lot of pictures of Route 1.
Orion, thank you so much for coming. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's so helpful to have somebody from Rockport, so much appreciated.
Absolutely,
Agreed.
For sure.
Agreed. Here. Thanks, Orion.
Thank you, thank you.
Looking forward to the next one.
And you too, Allison, always.
I like this a little too
Yeah.
much. That's the problem.
Okay.
That's what's
Happy
fun,
August,
Allison.
everyone.